Hi everyone, this is Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn, and together with chesslecture.com, I'd like to welcome you to today's video. Now today I want to show you a very instructive miniature where White played very straightforward moves to absolutely destroy the Sicilian defense. And this is a game that I played a while back against a pretty strong master, Doug Eckert. And I want you to pay attention to how swiftly White's attack happened. Almost reminiscent of Mikhail Tal, who loved to sacrifice pieces. So after the moves e4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4 takes, Black goes for this Scheveningen variation. Now, this is actually a little bit of an older move order. Like, this is not as popular these days as much because of the Keres attack, this move g4, and typically followed by g5. But Black says, you know what? This is typical Sicilian defense. When you play g4, you're really overexposing your king side. I am going to try to get counterplay on the queen side. So he plays after f4. By the way, notice that I'm not playing g4 yet. He plays a6, queen f3. I still want to go for g4, g5, but first things first, I'm going for a very specific setup. This queen f3 setup is going to try to put pressure and discourage Black from playing an early b5 because of the e5 pawn push. So Doug plays queen c7, bishop e3, b5. Now e5 is actually not as good because obviously bishops come in with the tempo. I played a3 to stop b4, knight bd7, logical chess. g4, here comes my g-pawn, and this is a very classic Sicilian position that could happen actually from many different move orders, such as the Scheveningen here. You can also get it from the Najdorf Sicilian. If Black plays early a6, d6, then he can always play e6. So this kind of structure is extremely important to know. Now, what are the different ideas for White and for Black? Well, White actually has a very simple plan to play for g5, put pressure on the knight, and to go for the king. Black, in turn, tries to fianchetto the bishop, maybe play knight c5, try to target the pawn. In some instances, not here, if the rook ever gets to c8, there's going to be exchange sacks, obviously not with the queen on c7, and it's actually unclear if Black is going to castle kingside in this game. So he plays knight b6. That's, by the way, another cool idea to try to get the knight on c4, but also freeing up the square on d7. But I'm not sure if this is the best square for the knight. Perhaps knight c5 would have been better. But this is just completely playable move too. g5, however, knight f to d7. And so far, so good. Both sides are executing their plans. He actually wants to vacate that square for the d7 knight. And here I played castle. Very simple setup. So I want you to remember this setup. g5, f4, e4. Both knights like this, pawn on a3, bishop here, queen here. This is called the aggressive setup against virtually any Najdorf or Scheveningen type of Sicilian. But the key question is, how do you make use of this aggressive setup? So my opponent simply plays bishop b7. Very logical move. Obviously, knight c5 is coming, and he may leave the king on e8 for the time being. He may castle even queenside, or maybe even bishop e7 on kingside. But one thing that my opponent did not know in this game is the vulnerable e6 square. Well, it actually looks like it's not vulnerable at all. But let's see what happens next. Queen h3, exclam. This is the key move that puts the whole setup question mark for Black. Because g6 is my main idea. Obviously, he cannot take with h-pawn because of the x-ray. If he takes the f-pawn, he's going to lose the pawn. And therefore, Black is really facing serious danger here, guys. Already unclear how to defend against the g6 threat. Now, luckily, I knew about this idea at the time. My opponent probably did not, and that's what caused this beautiful miniature to happen. So he plays a natural move, g6, which basically stops my idea, right, guys? And okay, if I'm playing slow chess, he's probably gonna get the bishop out, he's gonna castle, he's gonna create the attack against my king, maybe knight's coming to c4. White has to act quickly. And Mikhail Tal used to think that if you give me time, I will use that time to sacrifice and not give you any chances to recover, to even complete the development. And that's the motto of my game here. Attack, attack, attack. And what do I play here? Well, an attacking move. It is knight takes e6. You get already 2 points for the piece, and you paralyze black's king. Obviously, it's a very good move. But you had to follow it up properly. Takes, takes, bishop e7. Now it's unclear. How do you follow up the attack? And this is where comes the next stunning move. If you want to try to guess it, please try to pause the video and guess the move. And again, the idea is you actually need to get to the enemy king. The rooks are pretty much disjointed. The king is not going anywhere today, cannot go obviously here. This one's going to lose the bishop. You got time to keep attacking, and sometimes more sacrifices is required. That was kind of a big hint. What's the move? It is bishop takes b5, exclam. Another piece sacrifice for 2 pawns. So my opponent plays bishop c6. He doesn't want to deal with the sacrifice, but let's see what happens. Takes, queen is under attack. Let's say queen c6. Now I was going to take here with check, and everybody sees the big problem. Black is virtually playing down 2 rooks, whereas I'm playing with all of my pieces, and this rook can swing over at any moment. So this is pretty bad. Obviously, this is checkmate. And king d8. Now white has several nice wins. I'm not sure what I would choose. So knight f7 looks pretty interesting, but the king does escape. Knight takes b7 looks pretty interesting. Bishop takes b6 first is pretty interesting. Probably I would choose knight takes b7 check, followed by bishop takes check. I'm already gaining my piece back, but if you count the pawns, it's actually 5 pawns for the piece. Notice queen cannot take because queen takes mate, or I can pick up the queen, but mate is more important, and it's pretty much game over. So that's why my opponent plays bishop c6. So I've already got 3 points for the piece, guys. The attack continues. Simply takes, knight d5 threatening mate, he has to take. Another tempo move in the queen, knight c5 hitting my queen, but honestly, this is just losing. He realized this position is lost. He actually just resigned, but my guess is I would have just simply played bishop takes c5. Now, if I take here, he takes. Actually, another interesting move, I can just go into the endgame, and this is absolutely winning endgame. Yeah, I would probably go into the endgame. There's really no need to be fancy here. But obviously, the attack could continue. He has to protect the bishop. Some work needs to be done, but obviously white is better here. But it's much simpler. Just go into the endgame, count the pawns. White is 3 pawns up. Black should promptly resign. So my opponent resigned, and that was the 20-move miniature in the Sicilian. So what kind of lessons did you learn? Well, the first lesson you learned is the proper setup. Pawn goes to f4, queen goes to f3, bishop goes to e3, white pawn ends up on a3. g4, g5 is pretty important, but the cool trick is this queen h3 followed by g6. And if your opponent plays g6 to stop it, look for those e6 sacrifices. That's the lesson. In Sicilian defense, material is of lesser value. Attack is more important. That's what I want you to remember. And hopefully, you're going to win a lot of games and share that with me. Thank you very much. This was Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn for chesslecture.com. Goodbye.